The Sangre de Cristo Arts and Conference Center was created in 1972, thanks to local and federal government funding and the dedication of several local Puebloans. The center began as the brainchild of two prominent Pueblo women, Kathy Farley and Pat Kelly, but it took the time, work, and treasure of countless individuals for it to become a reality.
A lot of people have asked how Pat and I came up with the idea of the Art Center, but it was really more than Pat and I.
Pat Kelly and Kathy Farley met while they were both active members of the Pueblo Service League, a civic organization of women which is today known as the Junior League of Pueblo.
We were both active in Pueblo Service League. I moved to Pueblo in 1960. I was asked to join the Service League, which is a boon of friendships. I knew only one person when I moved here.
It's important to know that the Kellys and Farleys were already friends. They were fundamentally friends and committed to the community, and it worked.
Pat and Kathy soon learned they shared a love of the arts, and they both were asked to serve on the newly created Pueblo Arts Council, which was considering the possibility of building an arts center for Pueblo and southern Colorado.
I was always interested in art, Pat as well, and particularly theater. We needed to broaden the Art Center to include more of the visual arts. In sitting and talking about our many things, we thought, wouldn't it be great if we had artists together and we had a place to meet?
Much like any building project, this idea needed financial support. A federal program to create jobs through the Economic Development Administration was one solution, but it required matching funds and support from the community.
So we began to research how we would raise some money. And I was interested in politics at that moment, and so was Pat Kelly. And we had some very good friends, John Hill, the master of the coin. John was head of the finance department. He knew where every dime went, and he managed it well.
He's always interested in civic projects, of course, of all kinds, but his adopted son, Dale Hill, was very involved with friends in Colorado Springs and the Art Center up there, and imported that idea in his weekly lunches with Johnny and convinced Johnny that we really needed an art center here in Pueblo.
So, starting in 1964, Kathy and Pat traveled all over southern Colorado, from Leadville to Lamar, speaking to local arts councils to convince them of the need to build a center for the arts in Pueblo.
But I worked with John Hurtig the most. He'd drive one way to Leadville. I'd drive home. We would have set up an appointment and give a presentation, hand drawings. It was, now that I think about it, maybe a little hokey, but we were passionate. We had fun doing it. And it was, we made up our presentations, we learned something about the community before we went, and we had a marvelous time.
To compete for grants at a national level, they engaged Pueblo City planner Alan Bloomquist to write the grant application. They were also assisted by the Pueblo County Commissioners, led by John Hill, who pledged county funding to pay half of the $1.4 million cost of building the center. But finding sources of ongoing funding for the center remained a challenge.
They had to have some revenue stream coming in, so we added the convention center, and those were very important pieces that we had to sell to the government.
In 1969, Pueblo was informed that it had received the grant, and the planning and construction of the Arts Center began in earnest. First, they needed to find a good location. John Hill and Fred Weisbrod used urban renewal money to obtain the area between 1st and 4th Streets, east of Santa Fe Avenue. Second, someone had to design the building. For that, they enlisted the services of John Hurtig of the Pueblo architectural firm HGF Architects.
Hurtig and Gardner had come very recently to Pueblo, Colorado from Oklahoma. Young, active community people excited about making a mark in Pueblo, who took great liking to the river and the water, and they were hungry to be involved.
As soon as Kathy said, we've got the money and we're going to do it here, the planner for the city was Alan Bloomquist. And Al said, well, we're going to do it downtown. We said, well, normally you would find a park somewhere to go out and put the Arts Center in the park. Now, not next to a some pretty low-grade businesses here. And he said, that's what I want. I want the art to be right down into the business area.
Hurtig agreed to do the original design work for the Art Center for $500. The contemporary design featured two multi-purpose buildings separated by a paseo with a fountain that flowed down a staircase. From the top of the stairs, visitors would be treated to a view of the city's downtown area.
We came down and looked at the site, and I started to say that if you're going to do a building of the complexity and the variety that was to be in this facility, you'd be looking at a nice flat site that had access on all four sides. That made it easy to put the feature items where you want them in the building. So the first problem was we're going to be looking at doing this on a hillside. One day we were looking at this and he said, let's separate these. Let's make this two buildings. That by so doing, and then it created the patio between, or paseo, that you can go from the one building to the other.
The north building included classrooms, an art gallery, a library, and artist studio space. The south building included the conference facility, a dance studio, and a 500-seat theater. Construction was done using local Pueblo labor, and the brick for the structure was sourced from Pueblo's own Summit Brick Company. During construction, the site sign read, the Sangre de Cristo Creative Arts and Conference Center, and that plural on arts was important. The Sangre de Cristo Arts and Conference Center opened to fanfare the first weekend in June of 1972, and the performances and activities reflected the diverse art interests of the people of southern Colorado. There was an opera performance from a well-known opera singer from Pueblo, as well as dance troupes, mariachi and folk music, a barbershop quartet, plays, and a light show. Kathy Farley served as MC for these performances and got to experience the joys of live production firsthand when her sound system cut out during her speech.
And I'm in this smashing dress, and I'm up there on the stage, and there's no sound. And after 10 minutes, I thought, oh, heck, I'm just going to give my speech. But fortunately, the rest of the weekend went really well.
The Art Center was off to an exciting start. District 60 educator Maggie Divelbis was then recruited by Kathy Farley and Pat Kelly in 1973 to join the staff at the Art Center, becoming only the fourth employee.
Well, she and Kathy and Pat were always very good friends. Matter of fact, I think Pat and Kathy helped talk to Mag to get out of teaching and do the Art Center. In the beginning, she preferred to be just in second and not running the show. And after a couple of years, she had the opportunity, and she then decided, yes, running the show was the best. And her life then became committed to the Art Center.
During her tenure, she oversaw unparalleled fundraising success and expansion of the Art Center, including the addition of multiple galleries and the building of the Buell Children's Museum in 2000. Maggie, her staff, and the Board of Trustees ensured the Art Center would continue to grow through the generosity of dedicated Puebloans. The Art Center holds the light of artistic excellence in our region. This torch continues to be lit with gifts from Bob Rawlings and his daughter Jane, and Lavert W. and Frank S. Hogue Jr., who gifted funds to establish a gallery in their name nearly 40 years ago. The outstanding support of the Robert Hogue Rawlings Foundation has also continued a family commitment to arts education with the Rawlings Learning Center, housed within the Buell Children's Museum at the Art Center. Dr. Jarvis and Mary Jo Riles and the Riles Family Foundation represent another group of dedicated Puebloans who generously created the Riles Library in the Helen Thatcher White Building. It was the friendships that Maggie stewarded with donors, stakeholders, and volunteers alike that set the template for today's Art Center. Treasured advisors, including benefactor and political dynamo Bob Jackson, gave her a well-rounded perspective that enabled the Art Center to grow in a responsible way that ensured it would be treasured and enjoyed by generations to come.
I feel several reasons that he was dedicated to the museum. One, his love for art. And two, he felt it would be good for the city of Pueblo. It gave them an avenue to give the community art that they would not have had before. And it would give a different status to the city.
And we must not forget Sandy and Marv Stein, who led the way in fundraising and relationship building that remains instrumental to the future growth of the Sangre de Cristo Arts and Conference Center.
We went to the show probably once, maybe twice a week, an evening and dinner with Maggie, where we spent some more time talking about, thinking about, and other than a couple of three things, that the rest of it was two words: art and center. They spent their lives selling whatever program it happened to be. They were salesmen, but they weren't selling a product that brought them anything. They were selling a product that brought the community something.
In her work, Maggie displayed a can-do Pueblo attitude that reflected the qualities of both Kathy Farley and Pat Kelly.
She just loved the arts, and it became her goal just to be involved, and the only way she could be involved was if she did it 120%. Everybody knew Maggie, whether they were running from her because she was trying to get a donation or just being friendly.
One of Maggie's signature accomplishments was her work, along with Malin Butch Thatcher White, to acquire longtime Pueblo businessman Francis King's massive Western art collection for the Art Center. Francis King was a lifelong Puebloan who joined his father at the King Lumber and Investment business and became its first president in 1946.
My grandparents and my mother and dad were contemporaries of Francis and Mildred King. So there was a family connection. As a young man, I knew who Francis was and respected his business and so forth. I would see Francis at various things and we would talk, and I had an appreciation for Western art, and it was fun to talk with Francis.
When Mr. King sold the business, he invested in his passion for Western art, building a large collection over time.
I got more and more interested in Francis King's collection. We'd have a beer and he'd show me his new collection items, and it was amazing. He and Mildred lived in a very modest home, and the first time I went in there I was absolutely amazed. Every single space except the ceiling had art, and I mean not hanging art, oil paintings stacked one against the other, 5 deep, all the way around the room. Every room, even one bathroom, had some things sitting in the tub.
Mr. King wanted to donate his collection to the Art Center, but he had some stipulations. The need for a permanent gallery for display and storage of his art became apparent, and it was something that the Art Center did not have at the time. Maggie got to work right away with her stakeholders to get it done. Helen Thatcher White had grown up in Pueblo, a child of the prominent Thatcher family. As president of the Thatcher Foundation, Helen worked with her son Malin on many groundbreaking projects in Pueblo, including the purchase of the first furnishings for the Art Center lobby. This kind of quiet, no-nonsense gift-giving was typical for the pair.
Her wish was to have a memorial of some variety in Pueblo for the Thatcher family and for herself, and would be something to give back to the community. The first thing I said to Maggie was, this conversation is an absolute confidence. You can't tell anybody who's involved or what it's for or anything.
Maggie's leadership, with Helen Thatcher White's support, fulfilled Francis King's donation requirements, and the Helen T. White Gallery plan began. John Hurtig was again tasked with the design, which included galleries, administrative offices, and a children's museum.
And after the Thanksgiving dinner, everybody was pretty well gone except Mom and me, and I said, I got something I want to show you. And she said, well, what's that? Well, in the meantime, I'd gone into the dining room and brought this out of the closet and set it in the middle of the dining room table. And I said, take a look at this. This could be the Helen Thatcher White Gallery. And Francis King says, if this all would come to the way it's laid out, he says, I'll give my collection. And she said, is this really a possibility? I said, Mother, it's a possibility if you want it to be a possibility, and if you want to be the person that funds it and says, okay, we're not going anywhere until you say, okay, go ahead, do it. That's one thing about Mom. It didn't take her a long time to make up her mind about things. And so she said, it's a go. Let's do it.
Work on the gallery broke ground in 1981, and construction proceeded quickly. The $1.3 million donation from the Thatcher White family that built the Helen Thatcher White Gallery to house Mr. King's collection, created another jewel in the crown of Pueblo. The gallery officially opened in December of 1982, and unfortunately, Helen T. White passed away soon after, in January of 1983. The addition of these galleries meant the Art Center now met national standards for art exhibit galleries, meaning national museums and collectors would loan items to the museum for display in Pueblo. More importantly, Francis King's collection of hundreds of Western paintings and sculptures representing each of the Taoist 10 in the collection was gifted to the Art Center. In the 50 years since its founding, the Sangre de Cristo Arts and Conference Center has been fueled by the unwavering vision and dedication of countless benefactors, staff, civic leaders, and visionaries, making it truly a Pueblo jewel. The irreplaceable people we honor made the Art Center what it is today, just as a new generation of leaders will carry it into the next 50 years of progress.